All right, I would like to welcome you all to Kongsvinger Lutheran Church. This is our annual fundraiser, and we are live streaming this over at fightingforthefaith.com. And so we are raising funds this year for the Community Violence Intervention Center. You note that Kongsvinger is very much committed to supporting important causes within our community. We believe it's part of our Christian duty to support important work like what they're doing at CVIC. And then tonight we're going to hear from representatives from CVIC. They're going to give us a brief video and introduction and explanation of what it is that they are doing in the community. And then our headliner tonight is my good friend, Melissa Dougherty. I'll introduce Melissa shortly here. But let me first hand the microphone over to our representatives from CVIC.
Thank you, Pastor. Good evening. My name is Tracy LeDuc, and I serve as the Chief Financial Officer of the Community Violence Intervention Center in Grand Forks. Thank you so much for welcoming us to Oslo. It truly means so much to be invited into a space like this. It's really evident to me that your community is based on compassion and care and loving one another. I can just feel that here, that you all care for one another. Those are some of the same values that drive the work that we do every day at CVIC. Domestic violence is our issue, and domestic violence affects 1 in 3 women and 1 in 6 men. In a community like Oslo with about 260 residents, but I really failed to know that you have so many more online, if we related that to Oslo, it would be roughly 94 women and 166 men. Those rates suggest that around 31 women and 28 men may experience domestic violence in their lifetime. That means even in a small community like this, there are likely individuals and families quietly carrying the weight of abuse and trauma. As a church, you are often one of the first places that people turn when they're hurting. You are trusted, you are a place of hope. CVIC is a nonprofit organization founded in 1980 to address domestic violence, sexual assault, and stalking. Our mission is to prevent violence, promote safety, and build hope. And our long-term range, which really is kind of an audacious vision, is to end interpersonal violence within 2 generations. We call that vision our Safer Tomorrows Roadmap. Today, CVIC has about 80 employees and served nearly 4,000 individuals in Grand Forks and the surrounding communities last year. We also educated over 17,000 youth and adults about healthy relationships. We take a holistic approach because violence impacts every part of a person's life. We provide not only shelter, but advocacy and legal services, victim witness support through the court system, violence intervention for those that have caused harm in their relationships, supervised visits, therapy for youth and adults, and prevention education. We partner with about 15 local agencies like the schools, law enforcement, the state's attorney's office, and healthcare to create a coordinated community response to this problem, ensuring that no one faces these challenges alone. I could say so many more words, but we do have a video for you that Josh is going to play for us that talks a little bit about our Safer Tomorrows Roadmap. Josh?
I don't think people realize how fortunate we are to have CVIC in our community.
Oh my goodness, CVIC is one of the most incredible organizations.
I really can't imagine where I'd be without CVIC and their therapy.
Probably the most rewarding part is just knowing that you've changed lives.
We're lucky to have CVIC in our community.
The Safer Tomorrows Roadmap is really a plan, a very systematic and comprehensive plan to end violence in 2 generations in the greater Grand Forks area. Violence is actually quite predictable. Who's to say that we can't prevent it before it starts?
So one of the foundations of the Safer Tomorrows Roadmap is a national study that was done on childhood trauma. It's actually one of the largest studies that was done on childhood trauma from the Centers for Disease Control in Kaiser Permanente. And we know if we extrapolate that data to Grand Forks County that there's actually more than 1,900 youth who are facing severe trauma. So this is a number of children that could fill an elementary school, a middle school, and a high school. so a very humbling number. Where CVIC and its partners and donors and volunteers come in is we provide a holistic approach to that problem through safety, healing, and education and prevention services. At the end of the day, what we all want more than anything is a Grand Forks County that creates resilient individuals, strong families, and thriving communities. And one of the best ways to do that is to prevent violence from ever happening in the first place.
Kyle is an example of breaking the cycle of violence.
That's kind of how it started, was verbally, and then it slowly got worse.
Growing up in his house, he had a high probability of turning out just like his father.
So I went upstairs and got in between them, and he's just yelling at her at the bedside, and I was just kind of trying to push him out the door, and that's all I wanted to do, and became a pushing match, and we kind of wrestled around for a bit. We hit the dresser, and a 2PV hit me right in the head. I think it was like 4th of July weekend. And I noticed my dad was drunk. That night he decided to come home and beat my mom, like massively. Hearing about that the next day was pretty devastating, and then seeing her in person was on another level. Because my mom had a very strong spirit, and that there was no spirit there at that time. I felt it was my fault because I wasn't there to protect her. Chris was definitely like a nice impact on me.
As law enforcement, you don't pick one and say, this is the one where I'm going to make the difference.
He was an investigator, I believe, at the time. He came and checked up on my mom every day, and later on, knowing that he dealt with stuff as a kid.
I'm passionate about it because I grew up in a household with domestic violence, and we did not have a CVIC. We didn't have anything.
I would talk to him a little bit, and he knew, what I was going through, and he could tell, and he wanted the best for me. After that, I really started struggling in school. I'd go down to a special ed teacher, and they would read to me because I could hear it better, understand it better. I was kind of talking to her about the stuff, and the first time she's like, I know this place called CVIC, and I think it'd do great for you. And finally went in, started with Teresa Hug.
He'd come in and come prepared with a list of things he wanted to talk to me about, and just presented all the information very open and honestly, especially for a older teen boy meeting with a therapist for the first time.
I really wanted to, in that point in my life, I was like, I want to change my dad. And she told me, you can't change him. He has to change himself. And that was a very hard one for me because I wanted both my parents. I had to learn I can only do so much. And it's not your fault that you can't change him. He's got to change himself. I just look at my experience, I'm like, God, if I didn't have it, I wouldn't be here. I would not be right here right now.
What you always hope is that someone is able to go through therapy and take the skills that we're talking about and learning about and apply those in life.
And then with having kids later down the line, hopefully, and what not to do and what to do. And if you ever need help or stuff like that, if you're in the situation or a friend's in the situation, you can be there for them.
One of the really special things about the Safer Tomorrows Roadmap is that CVIC does not do this work alone. We have many partners, donors, and volunteers who walk alongside us. And because we don't walk alone, our clients don't either.
Probably the first involvement with CVIC was on the crisis team. was fortunate enough to be able to see firsthand what CVIC does and how they help this community so much.
Tom's stories when he came back from the crisis line were really moving. And then we had a friend who went through a tragedy. And she would not have thrived without the CVIC. And that's when we were all in. We were all in.
I have been in 5 different school systems, and this is the only community in which I have been part of a partnership like this. And again, I think that speaks to the strength of the leadership at CVIC. I think it speaks to the strength of the mission of CVIC and their responsiveness to the needs of the people in front of them. Where CVIC comes in is that they help kids understand the difference between relationships that might seem attractive but aren't healthy, and relationships that truly are healthy and based on trust, the right kind of love, the right kind of attention.
Now being in the role of one of the partners of the Safe for Tomorrow's Roadmap, I think it's really gratifying to be able to collaborate, to really tackle this issue, and just to be a part of seeing the Safe for Tomorrow's Roadmap move forward is incredibly gratifying.
I firmly believe that their 2-generation goal is reachable as long as we have the support in our community and we have the people willing to go out there and educate. It is a realistic plan. Think about what you support and what you envision your community looking like for you or your children or grandchildren.
The support around CVIC and its mission is there because the mission is solid and the roadmap is solid.
Ending violence in 2 generations is no doubt a nearly insurmountable challenge. But for CVIC and our partners and donors, we refuse to be intimidated by that, because there are 1,900 youth with severe trauma right here in Grand Forks County who are counting on us. We owe it to them to think big.
Hi, I'm Cara Fassi. I'm the, it's not quite on. Did I not turn it on? Who did I turn it on? You have to hold it a little bit. Can you hear me now?
It'll take just a second.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, I turned it on. I'm Cara Fassi. I'm the Senior Director of Development at CVIC and also very grateful to be here. Thank you so very much. I want to give a little update on Kyle. Kyle is doing very well today. He is a loving husband to Mariah. He is a doting dad to baby Winnie, who is now a year old, a restaurant manager at Culver's. And not only has Kyle stopped the generational violence in his family, but he is also a tremendous advocate for CVIC, sharing his story of resilience whenever he has the opportunity, participating in our survivors panel, and most recently, coordinating a fundraising drive at Culver's and raised $500 for CVIC. So full circle there. We adore Kyle. Kyle grew up in Gilby, North Dakota, and found his way to CVIC through his counselor's office at his school. CVIC serves individuals and families in Grand Forks County and well beyond. We meet people where they're at, whether that's in a school in Thompson, whether it's in the hospital at Northwood, courthouse in Grand Forks, or in a small, warm community like Oslo, Minnesota. And I have to add, or online, because we have telehealth services as well. So for many folks who live in rural communities, escaping violence isn't just as simple as leaving home. Survivors may live miles from the nearest shelter, lack access to transportation, and or just simply fear being recognized by a local community member. And also technology or the lack of internet access also leaves survivors feeling very isolated. All reasons why CVIC is very committed to serving our rural communities. While domestic violence, as you have heard now for the last several minutes, is incredibly complex in our communities where we live and work, it's also very expensive. And I'm going to invite Tracy back up to quickly just reference our budget.
Thank you, Cara. In 2026, CVIC really is facing a severe budget shortfall. We had a private grant that sunset with us back at the end of 2025. We knew that they were going to be sunset, and they gave us a very generous 2-year runway. and we started working with a private funding strategist. But at the same time, we had a change in our administration, and a lot of our federal awards were, delayed, and so that just compressed the problem. And if we aren't able to get those federal awards back up and running soon, that coupled with the private gap that we had could be nearly $1 million. Our response to that was to launch a Meet the Moment campaign, which was a goal to raise $500,000 by the end of July, so that vital safety and healing services can remain strong and accessible. And Cara will share with you a little bit about what's at risk if we don't do that.
Yeah, Tracy shares the numbers, but behind those numbers are our neighbors, our people. If we don't get to that $500,000 goal by the end of July, 725 survivors may not have a helping hand in their darkest moments by calling our CVIC line. 552 nights could be spent in an unsafe environment rather than Mary's Place, our shelter. 339 therapy sessions may not happen, delaying the healing process, and 4,274 youth and professionals could miss out on prevention education. But we are determined to hit that $500,000 goal. We've raised $215,000 since April 1st. So we need a big push to get to that finish line, and we greatly appreciate your help in helping us meet the moment tonight. Thank you again so very much for allowing us to be here this evening, and for the generosity you have already shown through just hosting this event and inviting us. We'd love to continue the conversation with you. There's a business card on the materials that we've handed out. Please give us a call, or we'd love to invite you in to one of our monthly tours. The next one is June 16th, July 18th, and August 20th. Truly honored to be a benefactor of your kindness and help tonight.
Thank you. And at its core, this work really is about dignity, safety, and loving our neighbors as ourselves, which this community, I can call brothers and sisters in Christ, we know that we're called to do that. You can also help by learning the signs of domestic violence, listening without judgment, connecting people to resources, and supporting organizations like CVIC. And as Cara said, thank you so much for inviting us tonight. We just felt really warm and welcomed.
All right, we only have to raise $250,000 tonight. Yes. No big deal.
We're going until we stop. Until we get there.
Right. So those of you online who have joined us, there is a link in the description of this video, and that will take you to defenseagainstthefalsearts.com, and there is a donate button, and all of the donations that you make are tax deductible, and 100% of the proceeds go to CVIC. We do not take an administrative cut or anything like that. So anything that you can contribute to help with the CVIC's dire need to reach their $500,000 goal by the end of July is greatly appreciated. Now, it is with great pleasure that I get to introduce my good friend, Melissa Dougherty. Yes, sir?
You have to share your screen from a laptop to the
I'm going to have to share my screen. And which part of my screen am I sharing? Oh, the Zoom bit. Got it. Okay, hold on a second here. I can be taught. Okay. I'm just a little slow when it comes to training. All right, let me do this. Don't you be laughing at me, Melissa. I can see that you're doing that.
I'm laughing. Yeah.
No, you got to stop. So.
No.
All right. Hang on a second here. I am going to make it so that you are the one that is visible, not me. I don't want to be seen. But let's see here. Let's go to speaker. There we go. And it'll switch automatically when the time comes. And I just got to do one more thing. And that is share my screen to the great room, Josh. All right, I'm sharing the screen to the great room. There. Things are happening. Choose content. We're going to choose window or app. This one, mirror. There we go. All right. Melissa, I think if you start talking, it'll switch over to you. And so there we go.
Here I am.
Yeah, that's right. We invited you so that you can educate us regarding New Thought. That seems to be like your area of super expertise. Having written the book Happy Lies, I think that this would be a wonderful primer on the subject, and I'm going to go sit down and be quiet and let you take over from here.
Yeah, that was very entertaining. Thank you. What a follow-up. let me say I'm very much a fan of what you guys are doing. Anybody who says that Christians don't do, you know, all the social justice, you know, warriors who come out and like, Christians don't care about this stuff. Yeah, you do. And I love what you guys are doing, and thank you so much. I'm honored to be a part of this tonight. I love technology. So yeah, thanks for that introduction. Pastor Chris Wright is right. I'm here to talk about new thoughts. Now, I've never done this before, so there's some people online, and then there's y'all down here that I can see. So I'll be kind of going back and forth, and I have a little bit of notes over here. So just bear with me as I get used to that. But yes, I am here to talk about new thought, which is something you might not have ever heard of before. It's a movement that it's a philosophy that has a lot more influence than recognition, not to be confused with New Age, which I'll get into in a little bit. Now, you don't know what this is, and you do know what this is at the same time. This is a movement that I myself was a part of, excuse me, for many, many years as a Christian, and I just didn't realize it. It's what I grew up with as well. I became a Christian at 16, born again, life changed. It's just my theology was a little bit garbage for a while, just didn't realize it. But when I became a Christian, it changed everything about who I was. I grew up hearing about Jesus, going to church, hearing a lot about what Jesus was really trying to teach us, and so there was an allure there, secret, esoteric, hidden knowledge. And when you hear that kind of stuff as a little kid, it kind of just sticks with you. It makes you feel real powerful. And it was only available to those who really just wanted to see the truth. And so it made you kind of want to be one of those special people that could see it. So I still had that in my spiritual lineage, so to speak, as I grew into my Christian life and my sanctification. But I found a lot of dead ends. A lot of the Christian churches I was going to as far as finding answers to my Bible questions and general spiritual frustrations, I just had a lot of potholes and dead ends with that. So over time, what ended up happening was kind of like this blending of what I grew up with and my newfound Christian faith. And so little did I know that what I had even grown up with had a name. But I never even heard of the phrase New Thought, much less New Age. I thought that was a kind of music, right? I would turn on, the music. Remember when they used to have it on DirecTV, all this music and New Age music, right? I just thought it was just a type. That's the only format I ever heard of it in. So I had no idea what it was. But I personally believe, and in my opinion, in my experience, that New Thought is much more of an issue and stealthier than New Age, particularly for the Christian, because it's made to look and sound Christian. But I do think it's important to define terms. So I said a lot of words. I said New Age, New Thought. I'm not using them interchangeably. So what I'm going to do, because these are two different spiritual systems, is I'm simply going to define them, starting with New Age. So if I were to say what New Age was in 3 words, I would say that it's a salad bar spirituality. It's just kind of pick and choose, kind of a salad bar belief system. In a sentence, I would say that it's the spiritual worldview that seeks enlightenment, healing, transformation through a higher consciousness, a sort of awakening in that regard of the divinity within. So it was a long sentence, but in a person, I would say that it's most emphasized in somebody like Deepak Chopra. He's kind of a mixture of all these things. Now, the roots of New Age typically is more rooted in Hinduism and Buddhism. It's more Eastern mysticism. And the claims of New Age are more pantheistic, where God is everything, God is all. And I have a list of beliefs here that I think that most people listening will recognize and understand of what the New Age practices are. It ascribes power to nature, like crystals. Yoga, I had no idea that yoga would have been considered New Age, but it is yoga. It's a Hindu practice. Astrology, numerology, tarot, psychics, EFT tapping, which is rather odd. They believe that there's certain parts of your body and face that they'll tap on that has energy points. So if you ever see that, that's what that is. It's EFT tapping. Reincarnation, karma, past lives,
ancient aliens, ufology. New Agers have even growing up, there was a very heavy emphasis on aliens. They were not just some, gray beings out there. They actually were like interdimensional beings. They had spiritual knowledge for us, and they could talk to us. There's a whole side of the New Age that focuses on aliens. From that, you have starseeds, light work, spirit guides. There is some overlap here with New Age and New Thought. A lot of New Thought beliefs come from spirits, other beings. New Age would have, angels or whatever they would call them that give them knowledge and or wisdom. I embarrassingly wanted to invoke my own spirit guide. I actually thought that this was a Christian practice. Long story, but yes, there is some overlap there. Sometimes New Age relies on psychedelic drugs for a spiritual experience. New Thoughters would never do this. They don't look at it like it's a good thing. You want to be whole in your mind. They wouldn't typically ascribe to that. You have chakras, astral projection, excuse me, Reiki and sacred geometry. And both New Age and New Thought do focus on the Bible and the mystical teachings of Jesus, but New Agers would see Jesus more as a ascended master to be channeled. They would not look at him as just this more divine being than, say, you or me. So this list is not exhaustive. In my experience, when a Christian typically sees anything that's New Age on this list, right, they see it and they're like, oh, that's wrong. That's not biblical. That's occultic, right? But New Thought, in my opinion and in my experience, is trickier. It's a lot trickier. A lot of Christians might look at what New Thought teaches and what they think and say, oh, that's in the Bible. That sounds biblical, right? Because a lot of New Thought teachings are given alongside scriptures. So let's get into that hot mess. Let's describe New Thought. Now, in 2 words, if I were to describe New Thought, it's metaphysical Christianity. In a sentence, it's the positive thinking movement in America with Jesus as its mascot. And in a person, I would say it's Oprah Winfrey. Everybody says she's a New Ager. She's not. She's a New Thoughter. She claims to be Christian, quotes scripture all the time. So I actually made a ridiculously long video on Oprah Winfrey on how she's not a New Ager. She's a New Thoughter. Now it's called New Thought, because it's a new way of thinking. It opposes the old ways of thinking. You closed-minded Christians, you tap on the Bible and think, oh, you take it so literally. No, this is new. That's kind of the emphasis on it. They want to get away from the dogma. It's Jesus without the dogma. Or as I like to put it, it's Christianity without a theological seatbelt, right? The God of New Thought is progressive. It's always changing and progressing. Now, the roots of New Thought, Pastor Chris will love this. He's very much like talking about Gnosticism. The roots are more Gnostic in origin. It's secret, hidden, esoteric knowledge. True reality is spiritual. And by the way, this is why, according to people with New Thought beliefs, when you read the Bible, they will always be trying to seek a deeper hidden meaning within the text. The meaning is hidden. So that's why they'll say, oh, I read the Bible too, or I trust the Bible too, or whatever it is. But only those who are ready, can understand the deeper knowledge within Scripture. Don't you want to be one of those people, right? That's the allure there. It got me. It allured me. Now the claims, I went over this a little bit before. The claim of New Thought is that it's Christian, that it's a Christian belief system, a Christian movement. It builds on a concept called idealism, which is basically a fancy way of just saying the physical world is a response to your mental world. Now, the beliefs and application of New Thought. We went over a list in New Age. New Thought's a little bit more of it's a little bit different, but I promise you've heard these things before, these practices. The idea of New Thought is that your thoughts are things. That was actually the phrase, the catchphrase for New Thought in the 1800s when it really took root. We'll get into a little bit of the history here in a little bit. It's like my favorite part to get into. But that was the phrase among the people of the New Thought trend, if you will. Thoughts are things. Now from that flows the teachings and beliefs like manifestation, the law of attraction. And there's no judgment, no judgment. Because if you're judging something, then you're bringing that judgment on yourself. I've never met anybody who's been able to live in such a way. It's quite impossible, but it sounds, makes you sound really open-minded and tolerant. There's a strong misuse of science. Like it is pseudoscience, but it creates pseudoscience, but it's neuroscience, quantum mechanics, quantum physics, and then they throw in some vibrations and frequencies there about your words and thoughts, and they throw in some science and Bible scriptures. It's a strange sort of spirit science, and it sounds very convincing. It really does. A lot of people are not the dumbest people that believe this. They actually believe that this is a scientific and spiritual and biblical thing. The next thing on the list is I am affirmations. I'm going to park on this one just a little bit longer. I am affirmations. These are, I'm sure we've heard of these before, but in essence, these are new thought prayers. We can thank one of the founders, Ernest Holmes. He's one of the 3 big founders of New Thought. Ernest Holmes is who we can thank for affirmations. Now, another mutation of affirmations are declarations. I declare, right? I declare things, right? Affirmations, declarations. We find this in the Word of Faith movement. You don't ask God for anything in this format. You affirm it. You declare it. Because whatever you speak is truth. And this is wild, okay? This is a wild concept, because if you speak it, it creates truth. Because in the spiritual realm, that's really where true reality is, right? So if that's true reality and I can speak it forth, then I can speak it and create it, even if it's not actually true. That's the idea. And I'll get into a little bit into that later, because what you're basically having to do is affirm a lie. You're lying and trying to think that it's true. Father of lies, he's alive and well. Now, the true authentic self is another term that is really intertwined with the New Thought movement, but it's also adjacent, and well, I say adjacent, but it's intertwined with Romanticism, Transcendentalism. One of the fathers of the Transcendental movement is Ralph Waldo Emerson. He's also seen as a major figure in New Thought. He's a New Thought father as well. And the idea of Transcendentalism was the self is authoritative. So whatever's inside, right? Whatever is inside you is true, is truly who you are. So if my body doesn't match my spiritual sense of who I am, then my body has to match that, right? This is a lot of transgender ideology comes from this kind of thinking. Romanticism, same thing. A romanticism, if I were to sum that up in one word, it would be emotions. If I were to sum up transcendentalism in one word, it would be self. So those kind of dance. And so true authentic self is really where they would consider where truth is, not scripture, right? Scripture's kind of seen as a sideline, okay? The next word is Christ consciousness. This is a very interesting concept because there are a lot of words and concepts in the Bible that are given metaphysical definitions. It's beyond the physical, okay? You can take the core of Christian words like justification, sanctification, atonement, all these main Christian doctrines, and give an alternative metaphysical definition to them beyond the plain reading of Scripture. But Christ consciousness, a lot of people have heard this term in particular. It's a term that means that, well, first, a Christian, we would hear this, right, and think, oh, it's Messiah. It's the Messiah. It's the Anointed One. That's correct. Good job. That's exactly what it means, but not in New Thought. New Thought, it's metaphysical. There's a hidden, esoteric meaning, right? What New Thought does is it separates Jesus and Christ. Jesus is a man, just a human, just like everybody else, and Christ is that dormant inner divinity that he obtained, and so can you, right? So this is wild. In New Thought, you're just as much the Christ as Jesus is. You're just as much the I am as he is. So your goal is to become conscious of this, is to become conscious of the Christ within you. right? So that's kind of in essence what they would say their gospel is. The other idea of New Thought is that it sees health and wealth as your birthright. You are meant to be prosperous and healthy. More on this later. I could digress. I digress. I could go off on this, but I won't. This makes the Bible, New Thought also, makes the Bible into a self-help book, okay? What does this verse mean to me, to the authentic self, right? What does this verse mean to me? And from that comes the interpretation, because again, in New Thought, truth is from within. Now, New Age and New Thought have a very common belief, and it's that you are divine. You are divine, which is straight from the garden, a satanic deception. It's question God and give power, right? Now, how these two movements get to that conclusion is different though, right? New Age is more in your face about it, really in your face. But New Thought makes it seem like this is what Jesus was really trying to teach, right? And those mean, judgmental, closed-minded, intolerant Christians, they're trying to keep you from this truth, right? That's how it's caricatured. Let me show you what I mean. I have a quote here from a New Thought author. I have a few quotes, but here's the first one. New Thought practices what Jesus really taught. Healing, love, unity, and the inherent goodness of humanity. It's spiritual, but not religious, okay? It's Jesus without the dogma. It's positive and is ultimately the recognition, realization, and manifestation of God in man. Okay, again, you're just as much the I am as Jesus is, okay? The only sin, the only evil is our ignorance of this. This is actually one of the ways in which they explain the problem of evil. There is no evil, it's just misalignment. That's how they kind of make it sound. So the answer for why terrorists would strap a bomb to their own child and throw them into a group of people is not evil. No, it's not evil. Neither is a father or a mother abandoning their family or blaming the Jews for every problem in the world and conspiring to get rid of them through this thing called the Holocaust or pretty much any terrible thing that you could think of. No, that's not evil. That's misalignment, right? They're ignorant of their Christ consciousness. So if I ever talk to somebody with these beliefs, that's the kind of thing I like to ask them. I point blank, I'm like, is this evil? Is that evil? And I try to change the goalposts as much as I can. I want to push it as much as I can because I want them to see the foolishness of what they're saying, right? Now, one of the reasons why they have this as a foundation is because they believe that humans are inherently good, that we're not just this separate from God. It's an illusion that we're separate from God. We're actually united with him. Now, there's another quote here I want to read. Now, what I want everybody to pay attention to is how biblical this sounds, all right? New Thought is not New Age. It is not a dogmatic system of thought, philosophy, or religion. Remember, they're trying to get away from the dogma. It's the belief that health, happiness, and success are the birthright of every child of God. Oh, and by the way, in New Thought, everybody is seen as a child of God. You don't become a child of God. You just recognize it in New Thought. New Thought practices in the 21st century what Jesus taught in the first. Jesus really meant it when he said, "Follow me." We see Jesus not as the great exception, but as the great example of a fully awake being who practiced turning possibilities into reality. We are meant with God's help to heal body and spirit. We're to demonstrate love such that others are healed and made new. As Jesus said, "He who believes in me and the works that I do, he will do also in greater works than these." That's wild to me. They quote John 15:9. Even in a lot of Christian circles, they'll quote that same exact scripture with the same implication that, hey, Jesus said you'd do greater things. I don't see anybody walking on water though, Now this is just one example. This is throughout the entire movement. They'll say all of this is biblical. This is what Jesus taught, right? All you need to do is look within. So for me, this is bad fruit. This is just bad fruit. Now, with all that's the background of New Age and New Thought. What I really want to get into now, briefly, is a brief history. A brief history. Where did this come from? And I want to start with Gnosticism. Gnosticism is something that they had an issue with back even when scripture was being written, right? Now, what this is, it's the idea that Orthodox Christianity has lost or hidden spiritual knowledge that needs to be restored. That's the simplest way I can put of the goal of Gnosticism. People who uphold Gnosticism, which they're still around today, they claim that the Gnostics had it right, and they're preserving a secret teaching that was lost because of historic Christianity. This is actually I want to say, it was something that was alluded to in the beginning of the book, The Secret. Actually, it wasn't the book, it was the documentary. If anybody ever saw that, the way they started that was so deceptive. It was so misleading, because I remember watching it, and the way that they caricatured it was that all these Christians, all these leaders were hiding this secret. They don't want you to know. It's been hidden, it's been taken away. And I'm like, oh, how could they, right? I took it hook, line, and sinker. It was so bad. And so that's how they caricature it, right? It's this idea that's been lost or hidden. And Insta-talk, social media loves falling for this stuff. So just know that, all right? So there's a lot of allure there. Now, the simplest way I can put it is that the core philosophical and spiritual goals of Gnosticism is to escape the material world, to escape matter into the spiritual, because the spiritual world is true. That's true reality. The truest part of you is actually spiritual. That's why you have deep meditation, mind over matter, right? Suspending what the physical part of you has to say. The mind is secondary in New Thought. They would use their intellect, but it is not the highest way of knowing. It's always what's on side. The humanity has this inner divine spark from within. You can find that flame, so to speak, through various methods of awakening. But the overall goal is to overcome the physical world, especially your body. And this is, according to Gnostics, what Jesus did, right? He found the divine spark, the Christ within. This is why there was such a fight over if he rose bodily, right? So there's that. That's Gnosticism. I think it's important to go over that, because that's a really interesting aspect of New Thought. The second person, we're going to go over one of the first grandfathers of New Thought, historically speaking, is a guy named Emanuel Swedenborg. Totally underrated. I really wish that more Christians knew who he was. I want to go do a whole deep dive on this guy at some point. But he, think of him as like kind of like an Elon Musk of the day. Everybody knew who he was. He was really cool. He wore many hats. He was like a scientist. He was a religious guy. He was a theologian. He's best known about his books for spiritual experiences, though, because he was just kind of like this normal guy, but then he started having these spiritual experiences from these angels that talked to him and gave him secrets of heaven and hell. And that's what he started writing, like I believe it was the last third of his life. And that's really what people knew him for. And there's actually, by the way, there's a whole belief system that is behind his teachings called Swedenborgianism. It's a total mouthful. Every time I say it, I hope I say it right. But I think it mutated into this, the new Church of the New Jerusalem, I think is what it's called. And they're still here. They're still here today. The ideas are everywhere. It's a reinterpretation of Christianity. And ultimately, what Swedenborg did was he over-spiritualized the Bible. And because that's what his angels were trying to tell him, hey, there's secret knowledge here, right? Now, there are actually a lot of people that were influenced by Swedenborgianism, and some of them are, you might know, Helen Keller. Helen Keller was a Swedenborgian. She's actually very controversial. There's some controversy there with Helen Keller. Andrew Carnegie, Dr. Oz, right? There's just to name a few. One of the main teachings he was known for, though, was something called the law of correspondence, which, again, sounds very Gnostic, but the idea is that everything in the spiritual realm, the spiritual world, or in the physical world, has a direct spiritual counterpart, right? A correspondence in the spiritual realm, like physical objects, events, like right now, this camera, my lights, you, your shoes, your cat, dog, whatever, has a physical a spiritual representation in the physical realm. That's the idea, right? They symbolize deeper spiritual truths and realities. And this includes words. Okay, that includes words. That means that the words you speak and read, like in your Bible, have spiritual implications, right? So like words having power, that is influenced from Swedenborg. Sickness and wealth, right? When somebody is sick or poor, that corresponds with something in the spiritual realm. This is really important because if something isn't right in the physical realm, that means something isn't right in the spiritual realm. How do you correct this? Through your thinking and speaking, okay? So we're seeing a lot of batons being passed in that regard as to where we are today. The second person I'm going to bring up is Ralph Waldo Emerson. Ralph Waldo Emerson. A lot of people don't realize that Emerson was a New Thought father. He was highly influenced by Swedenborg. He was a former Unitarian minister, which they're now called Unitarian Universalists. And he was probably one of the biggest proponents of self-worth and individualism, historically speaking. That's the transcendentalist movement, right? He was one of the first people to make following your truth cool. He helped pave the path for the self-help movement, your inner authentic self. That's the true you. And according to Emerson, your feelings and intuition is godlike. That's your ultimate God, right? Guide. Well, that's true too. It's your ultimate guide. Your feelings are on equal playing field with facts. Feelings are facts. And somewhere Ben Shapiro has a twitch in his eye, but that is really what he taught. And so if you feel something, that's your intuition. There's a nudge there, right, that you ought to go with. Now, the next person on our list is Phineas Quimby. Some people might recognize Phineas Quimby. I always loved the name Phineas, by the way. I want to name my cat that. I want to get a cat and just name him Phineas, Phineas, come here. Now, if Emerson and Swedenborg were the spearheads, then Phineas Quimby held the spear, right? He is really the one who made New Thought into really what it is. He's the one who brought Jesus into this mess. He has an interesting story. He struggled with tuberculosis as a kid, or maybe it was just he was earlier on in his life, and he receives no comfort from what the doctors were saying, from the treatments, and he ended up being healed. But he said it was through the way he thought. And his conclusion was, people are only sick because the doctors think they're sick. There's a whole history here with germ theory as well, and this is still alive today, by the way, where people think that germs don't exist. Yeah, germs don't exist. They believe that the only reason why anybody ever gets sick is because of their mind, of their thoughts, and that you can think yourself healthy. That is New Thought, and it's growing. It's a very strange thing for me to see that growing, but it is. Now, the idea that he was getting across is your thoughts are things, okay? If you have enough faith, then you create. That if you correct your thinking, you correct everything else. Prosperity and health are products of the mind. Now, another person I have to mention here, and I think most people might recognize, is Mary Baker Eddy. Is Mary Baker Eddy of Christian Science. She was not a cat person. She did not get along with Phineas. I muted myself. She did not get along with a lot of people. She was actually quite overbearing. She turned into a cult leader. She broke away and created Christian Science on her own. And that was actually a very big divide, because she stood for what New Thought stood against. Well, they want Jesus without the dogma. Well, she put all the dogma back in, right? She put all the rigid rules back in that they were trying to get away from. So Christian Science is a cult of New Thought. Now, after all of this happened, there were 3 major New Thought denominations that formed outside of Christian Science, and it was Religious Science, which is now known for Centers for Spiritual Living. That was with Ernest Holmes. I mentioned him earlier before. There was Unity with Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. Unity is probably the biggest denomination, and a lot of people you might know were actually a part of Unity. Betty White from Golden Girls, she was a part of Unity. Maya Angelou, Marianne Williamson, she's really outspoken about her New Thought beliefs, and she's really good friends with Oprah Winfrey, just to name a few. So Unity has a long dark shadow, even if people don't know really what that is, what that denomination is. Then you had Church of Divine Science. Some people may not recognize that denomination, but a lot of people would recognize Emmett Fox. Emmett Fox, if you don't, I grew up, actually I can see some of his books on my shelf. I grew up with his books a lot. He is probably most famous for a book called Sermon on the Mount. And all he does is take the Sermon on the Mount and give it a metaphysical, super spiritual kind of eisegesis. And a lot of people still read this today. So that's some history on this movement. That's some of the faces of New Thought. Now, and the last part I'm going to go over is really where New Thought shows up today. And I think we see this just with what I went over today. The first thing I'm going to go over is health and wealth prosperity teachings. A third of what makes up the Word of Faith movement is New Thought. The belief that God would never allow poverty or sickness is actually New Thought and its origins, not from the Bible. I'm going to read you this New Thought quote. If I can bring it up. There it is. It's from a New Thought book that says, God will never allow sickness, trouble, accident, temptation, nor even death itself. This is never his will. We bring them upon ourselves by our own wrong thinking and speaking. God, who is good, can only cause good. The power is within us. That is from Emmett Fox. Emmett Fox wrote that in one of his books. Now, the idea is, now here's one thing. This works. People do get healed. People do have results when they manifest, right? And of course it works. Of course it's supposed to work. Occult things work, and God doesn't warn against them because they don't work, right? He warns against them because they do. And that's literally the danger of it. Now, the other places that New Thought shows up is self-help, the self-help movement. The foundation of the self-help movement was built on the writings, built on the shoulders of New Thought authors like Napoleon Hill, Dale Carnegie. You have Norman Vincent Peale, all these New Thought books and ideas that have found themselves into MLMs, multi-level marketing companies, if you don't know what that is. And if you don't know what that is, think of things like Amway, Mary Kay, doTERRA, MLMs. A lot of them have New Thought books as suggested reading. And the idea is you have to believe it, right? You can't think if you're not going to be successful. No, you have to believe it, right? And so that aspect of New Thought totally works within these MLMs. You have motivational speaking, coaching seminars. Think of people like Tony Robbins. And who's the other guy? His name, Jay Shetty. Jay Shetty is another good example. And so you have this self-help perspective of positive thinking. It becomes a theology. I'm actually putting together research for a video on how positive thinking becomes a theology, because it's not bad. We should be positive, be happy, great. But yeah, when does that line get crossed, right? So I want to really nail that down. Now the next thing I want to go over as far as this real briefly is being a co-creator with God, and the idea that critical thinking is negative thinking. One of the major issues with New Thought is that it stifles critical thinking. You're not supposed to think negative thoughts. So what does that mean? It means that if you're trying to think yourself healthy, you can't think about if you're sick, right? You don't want to accept that. So you speak like you're healthy, even if you're not. Like, you have to live a lie for these things. You have to force it to be true. And unfortunately, this is your general, I call it Insta-talk theology. This is what we'll find online. But what New Thought actually is it's the serpent's lie. It's a false Jesus, a false gospel. It's a false light. Luke 11, it's in Luke 11, it says basically to be careful that the light within you is not darkness, right? Satan masquerades as a false light. It's ultimately what it is. Now, most Christians know and love John 3:16. I love the rest of it, though. It says, this is the verdict. Light has come into the world, but people loved the darkness instead of light because their deeds were evil. Everyone who does evil hates the light and will not come into the light for fear that their deeds will be exposed. But whoever lives by the truth comes into the light, so that it may be seen plainly that what they have done has been done in the sight of God. So people say don't be afraid of the dark. I say don't be afraid of the light. So hopefully that was helpful. I hope that was educational for you. I would love to do a Q&A right now for anybody that is ready. And I just want to thank you guys so much for inviting me. It's been an honor to be a part of this.
Okay. I'm assuming Melissa can hear me.
I can.
Oh, that's good. So I don't have to assume. Now, is the second microphone for the audience?
Yes, it is.
All right. All right.
James will be.
All right. So you get to work through the audience. And Melissa, I have a question.
Sure.
So you rightly pinpointed my fascination with Gnosticism. Appreciate the shout out on that, by the way.
We're one of my resources for my chapter.
Thank you. Okay,
Yeah.
So here's my question, is that I don't understand if the whole goal of Gnosticism is ultimately to basically be reunited with the divine and shed the material body and things like this. Why do people in New Thought, which is clearly heavily influenced by Gnosticism, believe in such a carnal thing as prosperity and health and stuff like that? It seems like a contradiction to me.
I would not have seen it like that. If I heard you ask that question when I was in New Thought, I would have been like, what? That's not carnal. What does that even mean? The perspective that they would have is you are worthy of it. Like, that's your birthright. That is something that you deserve. So it's really twisted. It's something that is, it sells this humility. It's like a false humility, but it's really just pride. But they would not have seen it like that. To them, it's like, no, why don't you want to be prosperous? And then probably they would have gone into some sort of like a capitalist and free market kind of defense, right? Where it's like prosperity is good and blah, 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 blah. It would have been a very typical kind of thing. They would not have seen it as carnal.
Okay, so they don't torture their bodies and things like this at all. They just indulge their bodies.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good way to put it.
All right. Gnostic irony is interesting. All right.
It is. But you don't think about that, though.
No, clearly they don't, but
No.
Yeah, I'm going to stay awake tonight thinking about that.
Critical thinking is negative thinking.
Got it. I'll work on that. All right, any other questions? We do have a hot microphone. And do we have any questions from the comments section that have come in or anything like that?
Let's get some questions from here first.
All right. Questions here first and then questions from online second. All right. Hang on a second here. I can't really switch my channel though.
Don't worry, I got it.
Well, if I go to my browser, then we lose that.
Well, then I have laptop right there.
Oh, okay. All right. Stop making sense.
Anybody here have burning questions? We have one then.
Cool.
Can you explain the fascination with aliens? What is it that they love so much about the idea that the aliens are not only just out there, but they live amongst us?
Yeah, so I didn't really ascribe too much into that But I did grow up with these kinds of ideas, and my friend Stephen Van Cars, he was really into a lot of like the ancient alien stuff, and so I've kind of drawn from that. And I do remember having this fascination with them as like spiritual beings. So, but then here's where a lot of New Agers kind of mix it into their spirituality. I mentioned star seeds and light work. What that is in the New Age is you are put here as a light bearer to bring light into the world, because in your past life, you were actually from another planet. So in that sense, yeah, you're kind of an alien. And so there's this spiritual past, if you will, that you have, and your goal in this life, in this incarnation, is to bring love and light to the world. Okay, so in that sense, you're a star, you're from a star, and you're seated here on earth. That's kind of where it comes from, and you're a light bringer, you do light work. And I mean, it sounds weird to even explain that, because I would look at somebody who's saying that like, you have no idea what you're saying. You know what I mean? There's such a clash with reality and kind of a delusion with it, but honestly, they're fed this stuff. They are taught this stuff. There's a whole show called Ancient Aliens. So the fascination, they wouldn't see it that way. The way that they would see it is, look, there's all this spirituality out there. There's this huge, enormous space. And you do have what I'm going to call spiritual propaganda from shows like Ancient Aliens, who kind of feed them these kinds of things. And I had somebody close to me growing up who had very, shall we say, personal encounters that they couldn't explain, that they really thought were aliens, right? And so there's this, some people are afraid of the unknown. New Agers are fascinated with the unknown. So I think it really kind of comes from that. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
The answer is yes, it did.
Good, okay.
She just didn't have her microphone on. Okay, I have a question from online. This one seems very specific. Somebody writes, I would love to know Melissa's thoughts on IFS, the internal family systems. It's very interesting type of therapy. I don't know if it's related to New Thought at all. I haven't even heard of it. Have you heard of this?
I'm Googling it right now, Pastor.
All right.
What is it?
Okay.
ISF?
IFS, internal family systems.
Let me find a definition and see if that even helps.
Okay.
Hold on, let me go right to their website and just read this. A guide to the internal family systems. The IFS model is a therapeutic modality used to help clients identify the root causes of their emotional and behavioral patterns or triggers, 3 distinct internal family system, uncover their clients, okay. A psychologist named Richard Swartz, none of this looks familiar.
Okay.
Bohemian, I don't know. That's my answer. Subpersonality, a core self. I don't know. I don't know enough about it to say yes or no or have an educated opinion. But hey, now it's on my radar, so.
Okay.
You know?
Now, I have a question. So I have insomnia from time to time, and I'll just scroll through social media sometimes as I'm trying to figure out how to go sleep. And then, oddly enough, I'll end up going to sleep on some weird video about aliens and the Anunnaki and things like this. You know, if it's longer than 30 seconds long, it ends up, going on repeat in my ears while I'm sleeping. So all of that being said, one of the things I've noticed on social media is there's a lot of like TikTok content and Instagram content dedicated to this idea that we all live reincarnated lives over and over again. One group says that we are here on Earth because Earth is a prison for artists and convicts, and that we always get reincarnated here, and that there's 12 different places where there is aliens that live and they are far more advanced than we are, but they're keeping tabs on us and things like that. Is that any way related to New Thought, or is that just, other UFO weird content?
I would say it's other UFO weird content. What it takes me back to is a while ago, I did a video on Aaron Apke. Aaron Apke is a mixture of all this nonsense, New Thought, New Age, and one thing he really draws from is these spiritual books and teachings from aliens. Now, here's what I mean by that. These aren't just like, oh, these aliens came and visited us and gave us this information. No, these are channeled, okay? These are channeled. So you'd have somebody there who's channeling this alien, right? This alien with all this secret spiritual knowledge, and they write entire books. That's where it's coming from. So I would definitely say that in that sense, it is more New Age. There's not as much a fascination with it in New Thought. I remember being fascinated with really anything spiritual, but I always try to shove some sort of like, how is this compatible with Christianity? And then I just squared that circle. Right? Like I made it fit. It's like that Cinderella scene where the foot is just too big, but no, you got to make that fit, That's kind of what I did. And I was just kidding myself until I was forced to think it through. So I would say that's more New Age.
Okay. Question from the comments. Can you expand on how E.W. Kenyon grandfathered the Word of Faith movement through New Thought or Mind Science?
Yes. Pastor Chris and I did a whole video on this. It's actually on your channel. I think it's one of the more thorough ones that I've done. So for more info, check that out. I also have a whole chapter on it here, chapter 8. But yeah, Kenyon. Okay, so the question is not that New Thought is in the Word of Faith movement. The question is, how did it get there? How did it get there? And one of the weakest links is E.W. Kenyon. He was not a New Thoughter. He was very popular in Pentecostal circles. He was a Baptist minister, okay? So I think that some people think he's just this New Thought ninja, and he just wasn't. He wasn't that. But what he was interested in, and he had other things influencing him, but what he was interested in were all these like New Thought books and New Thought teachers and leaders and teachings. And he's like, well, why does this work? And I'm simplifying this, okay? I'm simplifying it. But why does this work? How are they getting this, these results, okay? So ultimately, Kenyon is responsible for kind of Christianizing these concepts into the Word of Faith, right? Because a lot of Word of Faith leaders, you have Hagen. Hagen is well known for plagiarizing Kenyon. But yeah, that baton got handed to a lot of these Word of Faith teachers through Kenyon and Hagen. Now there's another aspect to this. What is his name? He's another really popular New Thought leader. Or no, not New Thought. He was Word of Faith. Maybe it was Simpson. But he's another guy I really want to look at because he is one of those other bridges to unity ministers and New Thought teachings and a direct connection into the Word of Faith. It doesn't surprise me that these leaders were interested in New Thought teachings because I think it's like Lord of the Rings, right? You have the ring and it's like, ooh, we can use this for good, right? You're looking at these occult practices and you're like, I want some of that, right? Like, let's make this Christian. Let's go, let's make this work for us. And that's ultimately the quickest way of what I can say in my opinion, I think that Kenyon did. He saw the results, he saw the power, and he wanted to take it and use it for good, right? And it's just been a hot mess ever since. And so the fruits have been rotten. So that's a small elevator version of Kenyon and his role to play. But for more information, yeah, the video I did with Pastor Chris and also my chapter 8 in my book.
Okay, so using your analogy from the Lord of the Rings, would that make Kenneth Copeland Gollum?
Oh, man. Yeah, probably. Yeah, actually, that's a pretty good, I'd have to say that it's probably a lot more equal Yeah, because we could make that work for sure. Yeah. It's my favorite analogy for the occult. Because that's ultimately what it is. I mean, you're looking at it with lust in your eyes, thinking you're going to make this evil thing work for you. No, you're not. It will make you work for it. And it slowly corrupts you the more that you mess with it. And that's how you get a lot of these leaders in the Word of Faith movement with this power-hungry kind of lust in their eyes. Don't question them. They're just little Saurons just walking around, with all these leaders. And so it's like, nah, you don't redeem that stuff. You throw it in the Mount Doom. You burn it. You stay away from it. That's why God warns against it. Yep. It will corrupt you.
Okay, I have another question from the comments. How do these New Thoughts / New Age followers explain why they or their own people of faith get extremely ill and or die?
That's a good question. That's a good question. And one of the first things I start with in my book is relativism, truth, how they view truth. You have to understand how they view truth to understand how they can deny reality, right? That's why the book is titled Happy Lies, because ultimately the attack is on truth. Ultimately, the attack is on the identity of reality and Jesus, right? The way that they explain it is twofold. One, either it's a denial, right? Like they're denying that that's it. They wouldn't see it that way. They're still affirming, right? They're affirming that they're healthy, that they're well. Or two, and this is going to sound familiar, think of the Word of Faith movement, right? If you get sick, whose fault is it? Can't be God's, because God is perfect. The spiritual realm is perfect. So it's your wrong thinking that made you sick. So that's the way that they put it. Remember that I went over Phineas Quimby before. If wrong thinking makes you sick, then right thinking makes you well. So if you're sick, then it's your wrong thinking. That's the way that they would see that. Faith is a power. It's a force that can manifest your reality. And faith is belief. And so if you're believing for something, then you believe it with everything you have. You feel that truth. Remember, feelings are facts. Feelings create facts. You create your reality. You don't discover it. So if you're sick or you got hit by a bus, your dog died or whatever it is, somehow, according to these laws, you brought it on yourself through your own thinking. Can't be the spiritual realm's fault. Can't be God's fault. So that's how they would ultimately explain it, is that it's a misalignment of your body and the spiritual realm, or an outright denial of what's even happening.
Okay. I'm old enough to remember back in the day on Trinity Broadcasting Network, Kenneth Copeland and the founders of TBN having a conversation where they absolutely 100% just overtly affirmed that they are gods.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I remember Ken Copeland famously saying, I read in Scripture where Jesus says, I am, and I just smile at God and say, I am too. They're not as overt nowadays in saying that human beings are gods. A colleague of mine says that it's the unstated doctrine of the Word of Faith heresy,
yes,
that we are divine. So is that alive and well, and how do they hide it and mask it, and how do they help people discover it without coming under the ire of YouTube channels like yours and mine?
It is one of those hidden implications for why they have power. In my chapter 8, when I go over the Word of Faith movement, there's 4 lines that I draw back. It's health, wealth, declarations, and little gods. Because the implication of why they have power is because they're in the same class as God is. Okay, so when you become a Christian, remember the ring of power, right? It's like, it's about the power. And once you become a Christian, to the Word of Faith minister, you're endowed with that power. What once belonged to God now belongs to you, right? And so because you're a little God. You have that same power. Because they hide it does not mean that it's gone. And I would love to have, give me one Word of Faith leader, just one. And I'll be like, hey, do you still believe this? Are we little gods? Like, I would push them. I'm like, recant it or affirm it, right? Like, it can't be both, because that's the idea. But that is the logical conclusion to the outcome, right? Like, of what their belief. The reason why you can blow the wind of God on viruses, right? The reason why you can heal. The reason why you can do anything, right? Control the weather or whatever, is because you have the same power as God, as a little God, right? So I think that it might be semantics now. They still teach the same thing. They just won't use that word.
Okay.
That's what I see.
Okay. Another question. What are your thoughts on using vibrations, frequencies with positive thoughts? I know the dangers, but what if others fall for its healing because it works and is science? And then I would even just add on to, that's a whole big thing on social media now. People claiming that you can have the right healing if you just get these tuning forks that hit the right frequency. Yeah. Chuck Pierce did realign the Mexican border with one of those, but that's a whole other story. But so the question has to do with your thoughts on things of that nature.
That was a big thing I was into. I believed that every thought, every word, every emotion had a frequency and a vibration, and that was ultimately what brought you prosperity and health. And notice that it's always three things: romance, prosperity, and health. I don't see anybody putting out vibrations for like humility. You know what I mean? Like, why all the vice? Like, why are the things that only are, the comforts? Why not put out vibes for courage, right? It's very interesting. So that's one thing to point out. But as far as like it working, I would push that. What do you mean it worked, right? I mean, you're talking about something that's popular and trendy on social media that people want to hear. They want to hear. And there's a very big, I want to say, money-making market for these kinds of things. It's always been that way. It's always been that way. Before social media, it was all these books that were hot off the press, right? And to the It Works thing, I have a whole thing. I have a whole section in my book on the It Works trap. I call this the It Works trap. And I give reasons, because this was the number one thing that I really struggled with after I left New Age, New Thought, was, but it worked. But it worked. What do I do with that? It works does not mean it's true. I mean, you're talking about the falls of pragmatism here, like why pragmatism is ultimately not a good way to view truth. Because it works doesn't mean it's good. Because it works doesn't mean it's true. It's not what you ask for, it's who's giving it to you. Okay, like if you're manifesting or if you're praying, okay, what you're asking for is one thing, who you're asking is another, right? So it works doesn't impress me because it's supposed to work, number one. Number two, and I alluded to this earlier, the way that these beliefs are ultimately framed, vibrations, frequencies, whatever it is remember, if you're supposed to be having a high vibe and your frequency of mind, okay? You're focusing on the positive, okay? You're focusing on the good, on the optimistic part of that. That leaves no room to critically analyze what's actually happening in reality. It's created to make you not question if it's working at all. Like, of course it's working. So play that forward for a second. You're never going to say it doesn't work. So these people online, of course they're going to say, oh, here's the science, here's this, here's that. Oh, it really, really works. Because you have to say it works. There's no room in these beliefs to say that it doesn't. You have to constantly be in that frame of mind, that vibration, that it's working. And it has always worked. That's why truth, the bend of reality is ultimately what this is. So that's why I say, I'd push that. What do you mean that it works, right? And there's two different ways you can go about that. The one, they're just denying reality. Give me all your science. Okay, all right. But tell me what's really going on, right? And then I'd find an actual neuroscientist to actually, and I did. I'm doing as much as I can. I interviewed a scientist about the quantum physics claims, right? I want to get a neuroscientist on. My friend Anna Kitko, she's a cult science expert and really into like I think she's something about the neuroscience with it. I want to get her back on to talk about that. But there's always these alternative explanations that just make so much more sense. So that's a long answer, but hopefully that helps.
Excellent. We have one more question from the audience.
Maybe this is along with what we've talked about, but how do New Folk people define perfection or expect to attain perfection?
There is no expectation of it. You are perfect. You are whole. Your only error is you don't realize it. That's actually the inscription in my book is, you know that song, "What can make me whole again? Nothing but the blood of Jesus," right? The absolute shock that song, that hymn had on me when I realized what I was into, it changed everything. My jaw was on the floor because they don't see it that way. The inscription in my book is, to Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior, the only one who can make us whole. Because that is ultimately a functional core belief in New Thought is, yes, you're inherently good, and you're whole. You are perfect. That inner divine spark, that Christ within, that's really who you are. You are perfection. And so that's how they would see it. There is no, so everything that you know as a Christian, turn that backwards, right? Everything you think you know, that's how they see it, is that you're the one in error. We're not these bad people. You're not getting it right. You got to understand that we're already one with God. We already are connected with him. We've never been separated from God. So that's our goal, is to make humans realize that, to make them conscious of it, which is so anti-Christ. That is such an anti-Christ thought, because the Christian says, the Christian God is like, oh, okay, am I a joke to you? I became a Christian. I became a human, died for the sins of mankind, right? To bring us back into relationship, right? And so it's just a very anti-Christ message to say that. So that's how they would see it.
They live the lie.
It's a happy lie. Yeah, for sure.
All right. Melissa, I want to thank you for your time today. And a very great lecture, and thank you for the Q&A. I have one question that is kind of burning, and I saw somebody else ask the same question. Are you working on a new book yet?
No. Oh, my Lord and Savior, no. I am, these people that write books all the time. That was the hardest thing I've ever done, was write that book.
Okay.
But no, I have no, I'm good. What about you? When are you writing a book? That's my burning question.
So, good question. We just got first draft on chapters back for the book I'm editing and a participant in. And the working title is Resisting the Resurgent Reich. And it deals with so-called Christian nationalism and ethno-nationalism and the rise of Nazism. So if you're looking for somebody to interview early next year on that book, that's hopefully when it'll be out. So
that's a passion topic. I've been waiting. I want people to write books on this that won't write books on this. So I'm really glad that you're doing that. Yeah. That is very needed.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. Now, just a reminder, I told people when I was interviewed by the Grand Forks Herald about what would happen if you showed up here. We're not letting you leave the room without paying money. Not for the meal, though. The CVIC is $250,000 short of their goal, and anything that we can contribute towards helping them meet their financial obligations so that they can continue to serve the community and proactively fight community violence. And I would note, you guys run the Kids First program, don't you? Yep. because of some challenges in our family, we've used Kids First for many years. And so we know very, very well how important the things that you guys offer in the community are. And we thank you for the work that you're doing. And we pray that we're able to make some sizable contribution to help you meet your goals. So, and those of you online who joined us, there's a link that'll take you to our website, defenseagainstthefalsearts.com. And I would like to thank everybody for your participation. Melissa, thank you very much.
It was a great honor. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, that's going to conclude what we're working on here, and then you guys have a great night.